Okay. Toxic masculinity, Melissa. Let's
I
talk
have to
about that.
I have to say that I wasn't really familiar with what toxic masculinity was. And, kind of just digging a little bit deeper when I saw the word machismo, I was like, I get it. Especially being a Latina, we are very familiar with the word machismo and kind of what that means in our culture.
Yeah, that's definitely what I related it to. I heard it a while back when Lewis Howes was talking about it. He's got a book where he talks about the different masks that men wear, and it just kind of became part of my vocabulary. It's like, oh, okay, like I understand this and I understand it with machismo. But it was interesting this morning as I was walking with Matt, I asked him about it, and he's like, well, what about toxic femininity? I was like, wait, that's not a thing. And so we started having this whole debate about it, and it was just really interesting. He's like, well, I think that you got to have both. And I think at some point we'll explore that, because I came home and I started researching to show him he was wrong. And of course he was right. Damn it.
Don't you
It's
don't you
totally a
hate
thing.
don't you hate those moments?
I do. But it was something that he didn't see what the problem was with the toxic masculinity. And I'm like, okay, well, you're a white dude and you have all this privilege. You probably just don't see it. But he is also not um like I kind of want to put it like he's not a guy's guy. Like he doesn't have a large group of friends. He keeps his circle very small. I've never heard him be disrespectful to women in any way. Like, I don't think that, like, I don't think he recognizes it as something that he's had in his life, because he just has never really participated and he's always been kind of against the grain. But I've definitely seen it with other men, with growing up with men, having a large circle of guy friends, Ron, Neil, who we've talked about on the podcast before, and just seeing uh, kind of how things play out in the boys will be boys culture and rape culture, all of that. So it's like, oh my God, there's so much to unpack here.
Oh, absolutely. And you said it perfectly when you said a guy's guy. It's like, well, what does that even mean? And I think that that is socially constructed. And I'm really glad that we're going to speak to it today.
I am so excited about it. And I was really excited about our guest who's going to join us in the conversation. Mozo Cruz is a podcast host, and he hosts Watch Your Math with, let me say that again. He's the podcast host of Watch Your Mouth with Mozo, and he actually talks about this topic. That is what his podcast is all about. He's a Dominican Afro Latino, born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. He's a father, husband, and he's a person trying to make this world a better place, one conversation at a time. Welcome, Mozo. We're so excited to have you here to talk about this topic.
I am super excited to be here. Thank you for having me. And let's get into it. Let's get into it.
Yeah, I'm really curious. How did you decide to start being open and speaking about this publicly?
I think for me, the beginning was really being a father. Like, I think fatherhood was the trigger. I think that's what really triggered this whole my self journey, my self healing journey, and things like that. And I know we talk a lot about toxic masculinity, but more on my podcast, I try to talk about healing masculinity and what we can do to repair, and unlearn these things. Not so much, it's easy to point the finger. It's easy to say what we're doing wrong. And on top of saying what we're doing wrong, we also have to like come up with some solutions and how we're gonna go about, um, repairing that. And I think my way of doing it, I feel like, is by having the conversation, and I feel like um not so much like I said, not so much about pointing the finger, but just having a conversation with different people, and you never know how the conversation may affect that person that you're speaking to. You never know what they may go back and what they may learn from it, and who they may share that with, and I think that's why it's important that we each share our stories and we each share, our experiences with each other, because we all have a lot in common that, we don't realize it, but we have a lot in common. And men, when it comes to men having these kind of conversations, we don't usually have them. Like, as somebody who grew up playing sports, on basketball teams, baseball teams, we didn't never ask each other like, yo, how you feeling, bro? Like, how you doing? You all right? Like, you're like some type of check-in or anything like that. It was always like, very just rah rah, like, we're good, we're gonna get through it. And yeah, that's good. It's good to think that way, but at the same time, it's also good to have those kind of conversations where you can express how you feel. And you don't feel like you're holding it all in, right? You don't feel like you're suppressing, and you can actually express. And I feel like that just makes you a better person when you're able to express yourself in a healthy way. And once you learn how to do that, I think that everything else falls into place, you know. But for me, it was really being a father. That's what really triggered everything when it came to this.
So how would you define what toxic masculinity is? Maybe with some examples.
You know, so the word toxic masculinity, like I said, it's a word that's used everywhere. But like we all have the ability to be toxic. You know what I'm saying? We all have that ability to do that. You know, no matter what you identify as, what situation, we all have the ability to be toxic. But you know, I can only speak from it from being a man, since I identify as a man. So toxic masculinity is a lot of social norms that we see that we think are normal things and okay. And you know, an example: objectifying women, catcalling, street harassment. You know, these are all examples of that. Thinking that you shouldn't be washing the dishes. You don't think you should be in the kitchen cooking. Things like that. You know, that's how, you know, and that's, again, there's so many levels and layers to it, you know, and you can go on and on about it. But I define it as somebody who does not, toxic masculinity to me is when someone displays behaviors of where they feel like they are more than, or they feel like they matter more than a woman because they are a man. To me, that's the definition of toxic masculinity. That's how I define it. You know, if you're somebody you feel like, well, yeah, you know, if I hear another man saying, well, yeah, well, I'm a man, so, you know, I can get this done. To me, that's an example of toxic masculinity. You know what I'm saying? Because you don't know if there's a woman out there that can do it, or, you know what I'm saying? And there's men that cannot do what you're doing. So it's like, you just sound like a fool to me. So, but to me, that's an example of toxic masculinity. You know, someone who just feels like the man is the man, you know what I'm saying? That type of stuff. When, you know, like, there's a lot of women out there that are doing things that, come on, that men, there's things that women do that men can never do.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Get free drinks at the bar.
I get free drinks, you know, give birth, you know, things like that.
I was going to go with the give birth part.
Oh, yeah. Let's see where my mind's at.
Yeah. Free drinks at the bar. But yeah, no, it's interesting because you're talking about just all of these different things, right, that we see in toxic masculinity and also in machismo, with like the cat calling and the street calling. And I was actually listening to some of your episodes earlier, and I did listen to that episode where you're talking about the street harassment, right? And how that's what you want to call it. It's like, it's not cat calling, like that's a cute term for it. Let's call it what it is. It's street harassment. And I just remember just being a teenager and just not wanting to walk in certain parts of San Jose where I grew up, because I just knew, like, you know, I couldn't even drive my car sometimes without like people wanting to interact. It's like, dude, I'm just driving my car. Like, calm down. So
it's really sad. It's like,
mm-hmm.
it's really sad when you think about it, like, and you think about the fact that, you know, you can't even walk down the street, you know, as a woman, you can't even walk down the street without having to worry about, oh, what is someone going to say to me? How is someone going to respond to me? Am I going to be touched? You know what I'm saying? Like, are they going to put their hands on me? You know, like, those are things that you have to cross your mind as a woman. And to me, that's just sad. You know, like, you know, I live here in New York City, and there's a lot of people here. Like, I know there's a lot of people in California and other states, but here there's a lot of people and there's not a lot of space. You know, like, there's not a lot of space. So everybody's all cramped up. So, you know, I feel like we all live on top of each other. And growing up, I witnessed street harassment. It was like, it's regular. You know, like, it's almost like expected of you. It's almost expected. Like, a woman is walking down, I'm sure that I'm walking down the street, she expects me to look at her and speak to her, because it just happens so often. Like, she already expects for me to act that way. You know what I'm saying? So it's just sad to me. It's really a sad thing, because I feel like, you know, you should be able to walk around without having to worry about that, or, you know, have that in the back of your mind. And unfortunately, that falls into everything else. Now you have to think about how am I going to dress? What am I doing? You know, like, how late am I going to be out? And things like that have to cross your mind, which y'all shouldn't have to live your life like that, you know? So to me, it's really a sad thing.
Mm-hmm. I'm just thinking about, I know we're talking about, you know, how these examples of toxic masculinity are, you know, prompting women to have to, you know, maybe be more mindful of what they're wearing, walking down the street. But I just remember even growing up, my abuelita, you know, being Hispanic, you know, she would always say, you know, find a man that's going to take care of you. And she very much reinforced those, machismo roles. Like I'm going to want someone that's going to be the provider, that's someone that's going to be possessive or, stuff like that. So how do cultural messages impact toxic masculinity?
Man, they impact them greatly. Like I've had conversations with so many people where they say, well, how come he grew up with his mom and his grandma in a room full of women? Why is he so toxic? Why is he still so machismo? Why is he such a because especially in our culture, and when I'm speaking on Latino and Hispanic culture, a lot of times moms don't want to see their son in the kitchen cooking or washing dishes. You're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to find a woman that can do that for you. You know what I'm saying? If she doesn't do that for you, then she's not a good enough woman for you to be with. And unfortunately, those same things are carried on. Like grandmas think that way, moms think that way, and then if the mom and the grandma raise the son, he's gonna think that way. And a lot of times that happens a lot. Like and people say all the time, like, how he grew up with a single mother. How is it he still has these values? How does he still thinks this way? Well, that's the reason why, because this is stuff that's been, unfortunately, it's been so engraved in our culture. It's so deep into our culture that, it's men and women. It's not just men having this mentality. Women have it as well, so then it's something that's tough. And again, I don't really touch on it as much because again, I can only speak from my perspective as a man, right? So, but I can understand why, that a man might grow up with his mom or his grandma and then still have that same mentality as somebody who grew up with the manliest dad in the world who's trying to make sure he's the toughest guy, because the mom might have that same mentality that the dad might have, like you're supposed to be this tough guy, you're supposed to be this, like this Superman or whatever it is, like so.
Well,
it happens all the time.
You bring up such a good point with that though, because it is a cultural thing that we're dealing with, right? And having women do that, being like, oh, no pobrecito, like my mom always talks about how my grandma treated the boys differently from the girls. The girls needed to learn how to do all these things, and the guys, one of my uncles still lives with her. He lives with her, so does his wife, his daughter, like the whole family moved in because he was just like, you guys can take care of me, and it's okay. Where everybody else, like as soon as they got pregnant, it was like, get the fuck out. Like just a different way of treating it. But you're absolutely right. Women can perpetuate the culture just as much as men can. So then the question becomes, how do we combat it? And let's talk first about, what you're doing with your men and your circle of friends. And then, maybe we could talk about how women could help out on that too.
Well, for me, as a man, I just hold the people that are around me accountable, like, and I say this all the time, like I call this like, it's an art, almost like having to confront a person or have a, conversation with them about a tough topic. It's not easy to do, and it could be a public place or it could be a person that your brother or your father or somebody you're really close to. It's never an easy conversation to have. But I think the most important thing is how you how do you first initiate that conversation, right? And that's that to me, that plays the biggest part, is how I start the conversation with whoever it is. So if someone says something, a coworker of mine says something like, for example, let's see something that's toxic. We may say like, here, I don't know how popular it is in you guys are in California, right?
Well, we grew up in California, but we're in Las Vegas.
You're on the West Coast, right?
Mm-hmm.
So here on the East Coast, like a lot of men that are homophobic may something like, if somebody say something that may come across as gay, or they might say like pause or no homo or things like that, right? So when I hear a coworker of mine say something like that, depending on the environment who we're around, I have a choice of either having the conversation with them right there, or I could be like, I'll save it, put it in my pocket. When we're alone, maybe having lunch, I could bring it up to them and have that conversation with them there. And that all depends on you knowing who the person is. If it's somebody who has who may be very loud and may lash out, then you don't have that conversation with that person right there, because they may lead to explosions, right? You save that, put it in your pocket, and have it with them later on. But for me, and I tell men all the time, there's a lot of men that think like me and feel the same way I do when it comes to toxic masculinity, healing masculinity. But a lot of men do not speak up. Kind of like the example you just gave, Siria, about, I think you said Matt, what's his name?
Yeah, Matt.
Yeah, that you said that, like he feels like he doesn't fall into that, you can see you can fall into that. But if you're around other men, or you've been around other men, or you are in that environment, I feel like it is our right as men, to step in and to sometimes say something. And like I said, you don't have to be aggressive. You don't have to get into a bar fight. You don't have to do any of that. But I think that sometimes we feel a little fearful of confronting things in those situations. And and I think because we feel like we automatically think like we have to fight, but we don't have to fight. We just have to use our words, and be able to be, know how to use our words, and realize that our words are power. You know what I'm saying? Like, know how to use our words and be able to do that. And that's really what I've been doing. I just trying to have conversations with other men. And as far as like circles and things like that, I attend the Healing Masculinity circle, once a week, with other men, and we speak about different things, and we talk about what we can do to carry on the conversation, you know, outside of this circle. Because it's nice and sweet to do it in the circle, right? You're having your meeting, but what are we doing then now to take what we're doing, working in the circle, to take it out into our real world, whether it be in our families, whether it be at work, at school, wherever it is, So that's how I go about it. I don't know if I just went off on a sorry.
Yeah, I think that's really good. Can you tell me more about this Healing Masculinity Circle? I'm really curious. I've never heard of that type of community.
Yeah, so it's a community. We're all from all over the place. It's based out of the West Coast. And it's a circle of where we meet through Zoom. And like I said, we have a topic we speak about every single week for 2 hours. And for me, it's been very helpful, seeing other men that have the same mission you have, that are not afraid sometimes to speak up, or just starting to begin to lose that fear of speaking up, because that's another thing. Like, speaking out isn't easy to do. Not everybody is cut out to even do this, to have this conversation right here on Zoom with people you don't really know that well, and to have this kind of conversation. Not everybody can do that. So, I think that to me, the healing circle is such a dope thing, and it's something that I feel like is gonna happen more and more. I definitely see it growing. I definitely see it happening in other areas, and I think it's great, and I think it's amazing. It's something that I'm trying to start doing here in New York. Since that's based out on the West Coast, when the world opens up again, something that maybe I can do it like in a park, like with a group of men, where we could talk about stuff and maybe, organize and do different things, and, just bring more men along that feel the way we feel, and just maybe haven't gotten to that point where they feel like they can share it or express it, and then try to change the minds of other men that may still be thinking the way that they shouldn't be thinking.
I love that, you're coming together, because discussing toxic masculinity isn't about vilifying boys or men. And I love that you're making it as an opportunity to engage in dialogue that helps basically construct a more positive model of masculinity. In your opinion, what does a healthy model of masculinity look like to you?
For me, a healthy model of masculinity is just somebody who has empathy. Empathy, to me, empathy is big. Being empathetic and not just thinking, well, I'm not going through that, or I wouldn't understand. Because it's easy to deflect all the time. It's very easy to deflect. Like, yeah, you're toxic. Well, so are you. So are you. You're toxic too. Well, women are toxic too. Well, women do this, women do that. But at the end of the day, we're not talking about women. We're talking about men. We're talking about us, right? So, I think that it's easy to deflect. It's easy to put on masks. Like Siria said in the beginning, it's easy to put on masks and walk around. But, I think for me, it's just someone who's empathetic, someone who's open, someone who's just able to express themselves in a healthy way, and not being so not feel like they're going to be judged for it. And I think that's a huge thing when it comes to men. Men act a certain way, not for women, not for anybody else, but for other men. And that's something that happens all the time. When a man is on the street, on a block, and he's catcalling, street harassment, he's not doing it for the women. He's doing it to impress his boys that are around, to prove to them that he's a man. That's what he's doing it for. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's always a group of dudes doing this. You know what I'm saying? So it's like they have to show each other, like, I'm manlier than you. I'm gonna show you I'm man enough. Look at me trying to talk to this girl. I'm man now. I'm a man. I'm man enough. So I think when we start realizing that, what are we doing? We're doing this to impress who? Are we doing this for ourselves? Are we doing this to show somebody else that we, you know what I'm saying? What are we doing? And I think that for me, that's the healthy model. Someone who's empathetic, like I said, someone who's just open and someone who's honest and real to themselves. Because for you to be healthy, period, you have to understand yourself and know yourself and really start getting to know yourself. And once you start doing that, then you'll be able to be the healthiest person, whatever it is that you want to be, you'll be able to do it in the healthiest way, but denying it and putting these masks on and being somebody else that you're not just for other people, that's what leads to a lot of negative behavior.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just thinking of my father, who grew up very much catered to by his mother. And, I look at the problems that he's experienced later in life, a lot of it being, trying to save face, and you can't really express how you feel, due to, like you said, judgment. How does this impact, a man's mental health in the long scheme of things?
It unfortunately, it leads to addiction, it can lead to depression, it can lead to a whole bunch of negative things because, we think that, we're not expressing ourselves. I'm okay. People say they're okay all the time. One time people say they're okay, but they're not really okay. They're just saying they're okay. Now men do that. Now it's times 10. Now that not just are they okay, but now they're like, yeah, I'm okay. I'm good. It's all that extra of it all, but they're really not okay. Like they're really not okay. So what ends up happening is, like I said, drinking problems, drugs happen, depression happens, or you just start doing things that you wouldn't do if you weren't going through these things. It may affect your work, your job, your relationships. It just starts trickling down and affecting every aspect of your life. If your mental health is not good, if your mental health is not where it's supposed to be at, it's not even where it's supposed to be at. If you're not working towards getting it where it's supposed to be at, it's going to lead to a lot of negative and toxic things along the way. And men, a lot of men are depressed. I don't have the stats right here with me, but I have in my notebook when it comes to suicides, depression, men, the stats are up there. They're super high. And those are just the ones that we know, because not every man is saying that he's diagnosing, is going to the doctor and getting checked out. So we don't even know. But just that off that alone, the numbers are super high when it comes to suicides and depressions. And it's because of that. It's because of our mental health, because not being able to express ourselves. And, I've had multiple conversations with my dad as well when it comes to like mental health and things like that, and all we can do is talk and try to open up their minds a little bit more, because it's difficult when you raise in a different time. You have your ways, and not that your ways are set forever, because my dad has made a lot of progress from when I was younger to now. But it's very difficult at a certain age to start thinking or start changing your ways of thinking. It's very difficult to do that at 50-something years old, at 60-something years old. Like, it's not everybody can do that.
Right. Not only can not everybody do that, not everybody wants to, right? It's hard work. The self-healing is so hard. Like, we talk about going to therapy a lot on this podcast, and it's hard. It is just hard stuff. So not everybody wants to do that. But I am glad you guys both brought up your dads, because, I'll jump on the daddy issues train. Melissa and I talk about that all the time. And like, for me, I just think about the anger. I just think about how angry he's been, and how his anger always manifests into wanting to fight and wanting to do something. Like, somebody disrespected him at work, and then he comes home and puts on his steel toe boots. It's like, dude, what are you doing? You're not going to go over there and do anything. Like, I think at this point he was in his late 40s. And it's like, why are you doing that? That's just being stupid. And you'd eventually talk him down. It's like, no me va a hablar así. He's not going to talk to me that way. And it's like, okay, I get it. And just feeling that, that like peacocking, right? Of just like, I need to show that I'm this big dude. And it's like,
Right.
Why do you do that? And I just think the anger is the big one. Like, we're okay with men expressing anger. That's an okay feeling for you to have. But for you to express love or express hurt, like crying, like those things, people get uncomfortable. I know women get uncomfortable too. They're like, oh my God, my man's crying. It's like, yeah, you're okay if your girlfriend's crying. Yeah, it's okay. So let's talk about emotions for a little bit. Like, how do you try to model expressing yourself to really be able to show other men a healthy way of dealing with your emotions?
I think it comes down to for me, to be honest, like I I got into a lot of fights when I was growing up. Like when I was in middle school, I got into a lot of fights. And a lot of times because of just your environment, right? Like it's like I grew up like I had to survive. Like you know what I'm saying? Like I wasn't no one was gonna push me. Like I couldn't get pushed and just stay down to the ground because then I'm gonna get pushed every single day of my life in sixth and seventh and eighth grade. So I had to get up and fight, right? So I think that when when you're growing up like that, and then on top of that, you don't really have somebody else in the background telling you like a different way to communicate or a different way to go about it. You know what I'm saying? Like it's difficult. It's easy to just grow up to just know I'm gonna throw my hands every time somebody says something wrong to me. I'm gonna put on my sneakers and get ready to go outside and beat somebody up if I have to. If that's what I gotta do. That's what I gotta do. That's a lot easier than having to communicate with somebody and having to get deep, a deep conversation with somebody. It's a lot easier to do that. So, for me, as I've gotten older, because it did take time, like, and I say that all the time, like, I'm still learning and I'm still unlearning. I'm still on a journey. You know what I'm saying? I'm not perfect. I have a lot of things I have to work on and I'm still working on, but one of them that I've definitely worked on is my anger, and I, and I'm proud of that. You know what I'm saying? Like, for me to get physical with somebody, it's going to take a lot. It's going to take a lot for me to get to that point, for me to get to that level. And when I mean physical, I mean for me to want to actually show some aggression towards you, not me trying to stop you from hurting somebody. You get physical, that's a different kind of getting physical. But for me to actually want to go downstairs and beat you up, I am not doing that. I am more of trying to use my words so I can get to know who the person is. Why are they acting like this? What's going on? What's happening? And that's how I go about it. I have a 10-year-old son, right? And one of my goals as a father is to teach my son how to express himself without having to throw his fist around, without having to throw a punch. You know what I'm saying? Without having to feel like I was raised like someone hits you, you better hit them back. And you might have to hit first because if they're gonna come hit you, you better get ready. You know what I'm saying? You better get ready to swing and do all that stuff. My dad taking me upstairs, teaching me how to box and all that. When I think back, that was him preparing me because that's how he thought was the only way I would have to deal with that. It wasn't like, well, you might have to have a conversation. It was no, you're gonna have to use your hands. You're gonna have to fight and get aggressive and be angry and be mad. That's how you're gonna have to deal with it. And I'm trying to teach my son a different way. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, can he like karate and boxing? Yeah, he could like that, but he can also be like, hey, if a boy or a girl and another youth is saying something to you that you don't like, try to have a conversation with them. Maybe, I'm saying, try to talk to them about it. You know what I'm saying? Like, you never know. The kid might be like, hey, shut up. I don't want to talk about it. You just be like, all right, maybe we'll talk about it another time. But it's not so much about like getting so built up with anger. Like the only emotion we're supposed to have is this angry emotion of what we're just ready to fight and grab somebody's neck and choke him out and just ready to just wrestle and fight, and that's how I go about it. I just feel like it's unfortunate, but like there aren't enough examples of like fathers and just men out there that do these things. Like when you look at like social media, you look at TV shows or anything else, like there could be so many opportunities where they could show a father or a man having those kind of conversations that will make a huge difference in that kid that's watching that show or whatever it is. And even when it comes to music, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm very selective with the kind of music and artists I like for that reason as well as I've gotten older, is because, like we all have a different side. Like the toughest rapper, he's a father. He might be a father and he might show a side where he may, be a caring father and stuff like that. But we don't get to see that side. We don't get to see the side of like I'm this, I am that, you know what I'm saying? I'm ready to just, and I think that if society was more open to that, then I feel like artists would be more open to showing that side of them. But then they feel like I can't show that side of me because now what? How am I going to sell records? How are the kids going to like my songs? How are they going to, so I think it's a bigger issue. But the way I go about it is just by, again, trying to affect the people that are closest to me and things like that. Because I feel like one person you speak to that you can make a difference to me, that's more than enough. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes that's all you can do sometimes, And what I'm trying to do is just get to a point in my life where maybe, I have a larger platform. I'm able to really speak to a lot more people, right? But it all starts with having that same conversation with the people that are closest to you. And like my father, I've had the conversation so many times, and
No, I think that's wonderful. I love that you talk about learning and unlearning. I think that that's really important. And I want to come back to something City had mentioned earlier, which is how can women help support, kind of deconstructing this toxic masculinity?
I think women have done a great job when it comes to this. Excuse me. Women are not afraid to say what they want to say, from what I've seen, which is great. That's how it should be, and I love it. And the only thing that I ask, is that, and I know it's difficult to ask because y'all go through a lot, but it's just to sometimes have a little more patience. And by patience, I mean, not every man is going to be toxic as the next man. So when you first meet somebody, right, whoever it is, let's say you meet for the first time, right, and we meet each other and we're going on our first date together or whatever, don't assume off the top that he's going to be toxic just because the last one was toxic, because then that creates a whole thing of now the man who may not be as toxic as his last one may end up being just as toxic, because now he feels like, damn, I gotta be toxic. You know what I'm trying to say? Or I feel like I gotta be that way. And I feel like that happens a lot of times, just a quick story. So I was having a conversation with one of my healing masculinity homies, and we said how a lot of times we don't want to grow up to be like when I had my first girlfriend, I felt like I was very loving my girlfriend, I was very I was I guess I was in love. I was oh my God, puppy love, it's my girlfriend, da da da. But then it's almost are you gonna fight for me? If this guy tries to talk to me, are you gonna fight for me? So it's wait, who do you want? Am I not man enough for her? You know what I'm saying? Now you start doubting yourself. Am I not man enough? I don't know if y'all saw this TikTok. There was a TikTok, which I have a huge problem with. I don't know if y'all on TikTok, but I don't like TikTok like that.
I'm looking at City over here, who is
I love TikTok, but I'm open to hearing what you got to say.
But there was a TikTok where it was a boyfriend and a girlfriend, right, in a car, and the girlfriend goes, "What would you do if you saw another guy kissing me? If you saw another guy kissing me or something like that, what would you do?" And the guy was like, "I would do nothing. That's his problem now. I wouldn't do nothing. You know what I'm saying? Da da da." She's like, "Well, you wouldn't fight for me?" He's like, "No, that's your problem now." You know what I'm saying? And first off, I have a lot of issues with that video. But the first issue I have is they look like they were old enough to not have that whole boyfriend girlfriend type of conversation. It was very immature to me, right? So it's TikTok is feeding into the younger kids, right? So now you got younger people watching this, there might be a teenage girl, a preteen girl watching that video, right, and thinking, I need to ask my boyfriend, would you fight for me? Mm-hmm. Which is not a question you should ask in a relationship for anybody. You shouldn't ask, that's not a healthy thing to ask somebody in a relationship. Would you fight for me? Because if you really think that person cares about you, you would know that person would fight for you. And when I mean fight, I don't mean fight physically. I mean fight for you, do what they got to do to cherish and take care of what they have. So that TikTok really brought in it was a deep conversation we had about that TikTok, which is crazy because it was just a little TikTok, but it led to a whole thing, because I thought back to when I was a kid and to when I had my, my first girlfriend, how that shaped me into thinking when it came to having other relationships, how that first relationship you may have may lead to how you as a person and now look into your other future relationships.
No, it's so funny that you bring up that TikTok, because what it reminded me of was one of our friends tells a story about when Bruno Mars's Grenade song came out. She started asking her husband a lot of the questions that he says in the song. She's like, "Would you catch a grenade for me?" And he's like, "Why would I do that? That's so stupid. We've got 2 kids." No. And then she's like, "Well, would you throw your hand on a blade for me?" And he's like, "No, again, why am I doing this? Would you jump on in front of a train for me?" He's like, "Again, no, I'm not doing this. And why am I in all these perils to begin with? Stop it." And then so he finally heard the song and he's just like, "Oh, okay." And then what's funny is that then the next song Bruno Mars released was Lazy, and he wasn't doing anything. So her husband's like, "He's not catching a grenade for you today. He's not doing anything else for you today." But it's just so funny because it is it is that mentality, right? Of like, well, I need you to do all these things. Because I know as a woman, sometimes like Matt's not really a jealous kind of person. And sometimes that irks me. It's like, I want you to be more jealous, but it's like, why do I want you to be more jealous? Like that's not a good thing, but it feeds into that. I don't know if it's ego, or maybe it does feed into that toxic masculinity of like, like, yeah, I want you to fight for me. Like, I know he provides for me. He takes care of me. Like, do I need him to be jealous all the time? No, it's probably not a good thing, but it's like, where is that coming from, right? We have to ask ourselves as women, why do we want these things? Why do you want him to fight? Like, why would you even put him in this situation?
Right. I think it's just that jealous, like to some people, jealous like equals love. You know what I'm saying? Like
Mm-hmm.
jealous means love. So like if you're not jealous over me, then that means you don't love me because you're not jealous. And where does it come from? I don't know about y'all, but I remember growing up and seeing novelas, like the TV novelas on my TV, and I remember the man was always like, "No, that's my woman," like in Spanish, or like,
Mm-hmm.
"Esa mi mujer, da 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 da. I'm gonna fight for her, da da da." And it's like, if you're a little kid watching it, you're like, all right, that's what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to fight for my woman. I'm supposed to fight for my girl. And if you're a young girl watching it, you're thinking, that's what he's supposed to do. He's supposed to protect me. So if any man is looking at me, tries to talk to me, he has to stand up, puff his chest out, and get ready to just, take him down. So I think, like we don't realize there's so many things that affect, especially when we're growing up, that we watch, that we listen to, that we heard, whether it be through our families, whether it be on TV, radio, wherever it is. There's so many things that just shape our minds. Then we become adults and we don't know why. And then we think back and we're like, oh, that might have been it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're right. We're getting those messages everywhere, and we got to just be careful with that. Well, Mozo, we could talk to you forever. This has been so much fun to just get this different perspective on this. We do have 2 signature questions that we ask all of our guests. And
Cool.
The first question that we have for you is, looking back, what would you tell your younger self?
Oh man, that's a great question. Oh my God. I love that question. I would tell my younger self to love myself, to accept myself, to speak up for yourself, to be proud of yourself, to believe in yourself. Um, I would tell my younger self everything I tell myself right now as a man, as an adult, when I get up every morning. That's what I would tell myself. I would look in the mirror and tell myself, like, you got this. It's going to be a rough day today. It might be a rough day, but something good's going to come out of it, no matter what, and that's really what I would tell my younger self.
I love that. I love that. And I love that you're doing it now.
Yeah.
So our second question is, looking forward, what is one wish you have for yourself on your current journey?
Yeah. These are some good questions. In my future journey, I just want to I want to leave an impact. I want to leave a positive impact. And a lot of times we think about impact and we think about like this grand scheme of things. Like, we think of like people that are iconic and things like that, or, like just in a big, but my impact to me, my deepest impact to me is my children, because those are the humans that I'm most closely attached to, that I'm here with every single day, that I have, that I'm here with them. So I'm able to really give them all of me and teach them, and also prepare them for the things that they're going to see in life. Because, a part of learning and unlearning is that I can't tell my son that this is not going to, like, don't, like, I can't tell him about something that's negative just because I feel like it's negative. I still have to tell him about it because he's going to come across it some way, somehow. He's going to be a teenager one day. He's going to be an adult. He's going to be in the locker room. He's going to be wherever he's going to be at, and he may have to deal with that type of situation. So it's not just, it's teaching him to learn, but also preparing him for what's to come, and the same thing with my daughter. I'm huge on my daughter. My daughter's 3 years old, and I'm huge on just being emotionally connected with her, not just her seeing me as daddy's, he's my protector, but also seeing me as somebody that, when she's a teenager, if she's having a relationship problem, she feels comfortable enough to come to daddy and talk to me, because maybe, she's not with daddy's gonna pull out a gun and shoot him like you see in the movies, like he's gonna pull out his rifle and shoot the boyfriend, or he's gonna beat up the boyfriend. No, if anything, I'll just have a conversation with your boyfriend, and we can all have a conversation and talk about what's going on. You know what I'm saying? If you guys really like each other, let's have a conversation about it. That's what what I want to do, and that's what I want to be. I just want to leave an impact, and so that the people around me, when they say that, they knew me, or they, whatever it is, that it was something that I left something behind where, I was my real self and my genuine self, authentic, and not afraid to say what I have to say, and not afraid to love, not afraid to care. And that's it, man. That's really what I want for the future.
Thank you so much for spending your time with us. We had so much fun delving into this topic with you.
We want to hear from you. How have you combated toxic masculinity? Let us know on Instagram or on our private Facebook group, Pivotal Moments HQ. We want to thank our producer and music director, Ron Johnson. This has been an Astronomicus DMR production. Thank you for listening. Remember, it's never too late and you're right on time.